is if you've gone into love addiction, and maybe this is how we'll structure this, there'll be two sections. The first one would be around you've absolutely no idea of what love addiction is. You just feel a particular way. And maybe the relationship you have just been in has ended, is about to end, is gone into a very dire, devastated space.
Yeah.
And you have gone into a tailspin about that. And then maybe the second part, we'll talk about if you have some idea of love addiction, you might already be in the rooms a little bit. Maybe you have a bit of language around it, and a relationship you are in has come to an end or is coming to an end. So what do we do in those particular things? And maybe from my point of view, it would be really interesting to speak about what to do and what not to do in those moments. So imagine you've got somebody who has no idea what love addiction is. Relationship has come to an end. Generally, the feelings are absolutely devastating. The person is gone. Maybe they're not making contact. Maybe they've cut all contact. Maybe they're with somebody else. It doesn't matter. What do you do? Because I know in that space, the want is to reach out, right? The want is to make contact. The want is to try and get information. The want is to do that. I'd be really interested to have that conversation around what would be the best thing to do to mind yourself.
Yeah. So that's exactly the thing, isn't it? So the love addict who doesn't know anything about what's happening. Well, first of all, absolutely terrifying. If you are an actual love addict and you've gone into the first 24 hours of withdrawal, which can stay, by the way, for several days, you might still be in it if you're tapping into this again this week. I mean, it's absolutely terrifying if we don't know what's happening because it's so extreme, like we spoke about last time. So you don't know what's happening, maybe by some miracle of the universe, you might somehow have heard the term love addiction, which might have led you to a bit of understanding about what's going on. But trying to reach out, trying to reconnect with the person who's gone is, I can assure you from this standpoint, not the good idea, even though it's the only idea that you will have in your head and in your heart is to run out, get this person turned around, get the relationship reestablished, get the thing back onto its even keel, even though it hasn't been on an even keel. And when in time we're able to appraise what the relationship actually was, you'll be able to see that actually it hasn't been on an even keel for a very long time, if ever, if love addiction is present. So, but the love addiction, the addiction part of this will want you to run out in the street, literally run over to that person's house, bang on the door until they answer you, and drag them back into the relationship. This is not what we need to do here. So this is literally, even though everything in you will be screaming to do that, that is not the thing to be doing. So what we need to do instead is literally understand that there's an addictive process going on. And like any other addiction in the world, it's literally like trying to get through half an hour without picking up. So for the alcoholic, it's not picking up that drink. For the drug addict, it's not picking up that drug. For the love addict, it's not picking up that person. It's exactly the same thing we're talking about. Love addiction is no different from drug addiction or alcoholism. It's just this person involved, not a chemical substance. So we have to try and get through without picking that person back up if we're going to get any chance at the beginning of the start of getting our way back to a recovery. If we don't know what the hell is happening, we just pray to the gods that under some brilliance of an intervention, somebody, somewhere, somehow, this person will have heard the term love addiction, and somehow that term will fall into the consciousness somewhere so that they can start to understand what they're dealing with.
Solidly understand and agree with all of that. It's interesting, like just tracking feelings when you're talking about it, right? Because when you do go into that initial phase of the withdrawal, of coming off the person because the person is gone, and that could take if you imagine a day, a 24-hour period, something might happen, something will take place, the person is gone. You literally, from that moment, the feelings come in, the feelings of insanity, the scrambling, the anxiety, the impending doom, the tracking, the trying to figure out what's going to happen, what are you going to do, how do we get the person back, like all of that starts. And the want to be able to ease that. And I think it's so it's so important to keep reiterating it is like a drug. When you're coming off something and you don't want to feel that horrible come down, we want to medicate with something to bring us back up into the place. And it's exactly the same when we're withdrawing from a person in love addiction, right? That we want to go back to the origin to be able to fix it, right? So, oh my God, they've left. Now I need more of that to make myself feel better. So now I'm going to scramble. So it is, do I try and call them? Do I text them? Do I go onto Instagram or TikTok and try and follow where they're at or whatever? And it's interesting when you were saying about, by some, if we don't know what's going on, by some divine intervention, hopefully somebody will understand the word love addiction, or somebody in your world. And then it can come in really subtly. And this is going to sound so awful. I even in my body, I can feel it. It's like, there's like social media and everything. You go down those routes of people just disconnecting. And that throws your system even further into disarray because there's no way of getting to the person. And it is trying to manage to just sit minute by minute by minute with the uncertainty of what's happening and not taking action, because everything in your system is going to want to take action, like go and do something, go and find them, connect with the friends, connect with the people that are in your world to try and get to the person some other way. And basically what I hear is, don't do that. Try not, as much as you possibly can, try not to do that.
Yeah. Because here's the reality. I mean, this is the staggering reality. And also, it's really important as we're talking to people online. I mean, it's really important. Again, we're just going to keep reiterating this. You and I both have a vast amount of understanding of this addiction and of recovery. Years and years of understanding this complex addiction and its recovery process and everything involved in it, both clinically and in our own world. So we're talking from a personal and a professional standpoint. So when you're talking about love addiction, it's literally like losing your mind, because like for the alcoholic, and to put it in that really simple term, an alcoholic putting down a drink, their entire world has been based around that chemical process of picking up a drink and imbibing it, and then getting all the attendant highs and mood altering and blah, 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 and everything that's associated with being altered chemically. Love addiction is exactly the same. It's exactly the same system in place where we mood alter around a person. Now, the thing about it is, love addiction recovery is about putting down the drug. So we have to put down the drug at the person. Picking up the drug is only going to continue the disease process, and we do not get better in that place. So the only way that we start to actually begin to recover a day at a time is by putting down the drug of the person. Now, that seems inconceivable for somebody who is in the early throes of disengaging from somebody, because they'll hear what we're talking about and they'll say everything in them want to diss this information and say they don't know what they're talking about. This is the love of my life. This is the person who's the center of my world. We've had so much, blah, blah, blah. Truthfully, this is just about fumble and function these first couple of weeks until you can really start to look at the relationship you've been in with professional help and 12-step help. You cannot appraise the relationship you've just been in at this moment, at this very time. You can't. You just want to it's like being thrown off a boat out in the deep sea. You're everything in you just wants to cling to the side of that vessel. The vessel is the relationship that you've known. There's no way to go forward. You just have to tread water out there for a minute.
100%. There's a small little piece in this, and it's not to get complicated around it, but because there's so many people that might have been in relationships, and I've heard this many times in work, etc., that are in relationships that they might have a kid, or they might have those where a relationship is still broken, and there's a want and a need to go back there for many reasons, and there is a bit of work to try and figure out what's safe and what's not safe in terms of connecting with another person in there. Because
Mm.
the whole point of withdrawal, obviously, from the drug is to step away from the drug. So it's trying to, my understanding of that is to try and gauge exactly what the contact is about and to keep it as concise and to the point. And then you step away from the person again. So it's not extending conversations beyond maybe childcare or child arrangements or the basic kind of information pieces that you might need to do, and then you step back away from the person, even though everything you will maybe want to do is try and reconcile or have the conversations or again reconnect, because I think it's a
Mhm.
very it's a more complicated version of it.
100%, Sarah, you're bang on. And there's another version of that as well, not to, just to piggyback on that. It's where, say, for example, you're in an exploded love addicted relationship and you're living under the same roof. And for financial reasons, you have to be living under the same roof.
Mm.
And there may be, we might have one kid, you might have 5 kids. In that circumstance, the most clear way to progress forward is to try for some time to get a little bit of distance. So whether that means you ask your partner not to come back for this, even though everything in you wants to reconnect physically, the only way that the withdrawal process in love addiction can start is to have actual physical distance. So there isn't a hope of starting the recovery process if two people are still engaged, especially if they're engaged in a physical sexual relationship. It's just impossible. The withdrawal process can't start unless there's a
Mm.
physical separation
Mm.
for a time.
For a time. Yeah, and I think it's really good. I think it's important to talk about because so many millions of people are in this situation and are experiencing the immediacy of being in love addiction or realizing that while under the same roof or for financial reasons or many reasons, children, whatever. It's like, how do you navigate that? Because it might seem like a really, really, really big, just overwhelming task,
Mm,
and that'll seek to kind of pull you off the path of finding your recovery, right? And I think there's
yeah,
a little part of just really and deep, deep, deep within me, it's almost like it's okay. I know it's really complicated, but in some way, shape, or form, you have to try and forge a little bit of space for yourself, whether that's asking parents or a friend or something to be able to step in and offer a different space, or you ask, like you said, your partner to not be there, whatever it might be. But it's definitely a really big consideration in it all. Um,
absolutely. And
yeah.
just to be very clear as well, like the whole purpose of recovery, starting and initiating the recovery process, if there is a relationship that is worth saving, this will be appraised as we go through the process of like the early withdrawal, the initial withdrawal, and then the first couple of months, it's all about digging in, bedding in to see actually is this a relationship worth saving, or has it already passed the point of no return where there's really nothing to salvage and we have to move on.
Mm,
But if it is a relationship worth salvaging, the only way we can salvage this relationship is by getting our withdrawal.
mm,
There's no way to go back into the fray and try and fix it without actually getting, if we're talking about love addiction here, there's no way to do it without actually going through the recovery process, the withdrawal process. There's no way to get back to this relationship and make it work. And that's just
mm-mm.
the reality of that.
That is the reality. It's very real. It is a very real reality. And the other thing on that, I know we're going to piggyback on what you're saying as well, is that your brain or in that state, a lot of the time you're going to want answers to questions that are not maybe able to be answered right now. And that's sometimes the driver, right? Which is like, if, yeah, but like, what if I just make contact to ask this? Or what if I just apologize about this? Or what if it's that kind of speedy grasping, and it's going to want to convince you 100% if you reach out and do this thing, it's somehow going to change the situation.
Yeah,
And I know,
absolutely.
like you've already said, with just a little bit of understanding and being in this in the world of recovery and professionally, like I said, and personally, that is not true. There's
Yeah.
that is not the answer right now. It's almost like in this point in the first 24 hours or week or whatever, maybe this is where you start writing all those questions down. You start going, why did you do it? I want to know this. Just put it all
Uh-huh.
onto a piece of paper instead of going to the person to look for the question, look for the answers.
Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. That's exactly right. You're so right, Sarah. That's a really good thing to say. Because we have to try and slow down our brain that's now
Mm,
galloping like a really fast horse. And the ways we learn to do that, that's a huge way of doing it, writing it out in a journal, writing it out online, or on a Word doc, writing it out, write out all that fear and terror and tension and everything and panic that's arising. Write it out, speak it out, write it out, write it out. It's the only way
yeah,
to get rid of
yeah, yeah.
it. But and then the other thing to talk about, which is really important, like the website name, what we're calling ourselves, all of this, RecoverZing. Like, it's a very dark subject, love addiction. Let's call a spade a spade. It's not fun. It's any addiction. We're talking about something that is life-threatening. We're not talking about something that's fabulous to be talking about. So there's no short sound bite, a kind of social media platform of like tiny sound bites to talk about this. There isn't.
Mm-mm.
This is a very complex, multifaceted addiction process that we're talking about. So there's enough sound bites that are going to give you a recovery. This is about digging in, bedding in, finding out exactly what we're talking about. But the reason we're calling it RecoverZing, which is really important for anyone who's listening, is this is all about recovering your Zing. This is all about getting your life back, your spirit back, your wellness back, your mental health back, your spiritual health, your emotional health, your physical health, so that if you are and when you are, because this is a given, that if you become well enough, it's the writing's on the wall. If this relationship is worth re-engaging with, if it's safe enough to re-engage with and work on, you can do that with Zing.
Mm,
If this relationship has moved past the point of no return, it's no longer safe for you to be in it, then you're going to work on yourself and you're going to get your Zing back to enter a relationship that's worthy of you. That's what this whole process is about. So we're
mm,
here to give you the good news. The good news is it is possible to fully recover from love addiction.
mm.
That's brilliant news, let me tell you. That is brilliant news. News that we would love to have heard back in the day.
100%. Oh,
Yeah,
absolutely. Loved to have heard that. I
yeah.
think it's such an important piece of information to give to encourage the moving forward through something that is possibly one of the most painful things you may ever experience, going through the withdrawal process and the understanding of what of you being in love addiction. It's just you there's not a lot of ways to describe it other than devastating, right? So it's the encouragement that you can actually recover from something. Look, you can recover from love addiction. And the ways in which you do that are kind of what we're talking about. This is how you do it. So even
Yeah.
though everything in you is going to want to do the opposite or be like, oh, fuck them or fuck this, I can do this, I can figure it out, or I'm different, just pause and really take a second and really think that through. And
Hmm.
know that if you do, just come back to the process again.
Yeah.
Come back and listen again and go, oh, wait a second, maybe I have tried that a few times. Maybe I'm just going to try this one time, even though it feels like my entire world has come to an end and there's no
Yep.
point. But
Exactly.
recovering your Zing in it, and I'm really grateful that you did actually describe that because we hadn't described why it's called that. And like Zing, for anybody who doesn't, it's like a vitality. It's like a want to be around. Your life is yours and all that it brings and all the color and the joy separate to another human.
Yep.
Because I know you can have that when you're connected and you're in a relationship and it's all there. And then all of a
Mhm.
sudden that thing breaks and you realize there is the Zing in your own world is not a thing because it's always been channeled through another human. It's always been channeled through a relationship. So this is about that reality that it has always been there, but because of an addiction, you've never had access to it. So how do we access it now? And this is how we access it. So it's really, really important that people do know what that is. And it is a book, and it is going to be us having these conversations.
Yeah.
But shall we talk very briefly about, if you do have a little bit of information about recovery or love addiction even,
Yeah.
and the same thing has happened,
Yep.
how might that differ?
So first of all, if you do have a bit of understanding, yay, I mean, great, you might already
Yeah.
be, we're going to
Rooms.
bang, 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 12-step rooms all the way, free resource right
Yeah.
beside you. 12-step rooms of any sort, find one and go. Sorry for all the dinging. But find it and go, very important. And if you have access to 12-step rooms, fantastic. You're going to find, we're talking about the relationship addictions here. So you're going to source CODA, Al-Anon, and SLAA, which is Sex and Love Addicts Anonymous. So wherever you can find those meetings, start attending. Then you're going to get yourself informed about what you're dealing with, because you might be a long time sober, say from a chemical or drug or booze or anything else, cocaine's anonymous, whatever, crystal meth, all of them. You could have any of them. You might never have even known that you've had huge issues in relationship. It's really common. It's more common than not that we don't have a clue how to do sexual relationships, especially sexual relationships. So you're going to find that by attending the relationship rooms, you're going to get a lot of information. But also you need to identify, understand, and start to begin to realize what you're actually dealing with. And that's about reading literature.
Yeah.
You're going to have to start to read around the subject of love addiction. And of course, leading lights that have been there forever, especially Pia Melody out of the Meadows. She was the founder, the forerunner of everything that is love addiction. She was the first person to identify that this, by working in the Meadows, an extraordinary person, recognized that loads of people were coming through the treatment facility that actually were suffering from this thing that she was to go on to identify as having a name called love addiction. And so Facing Love Addiction by P. Melody is a fantastic resource, and I would go out to your local library, download it if you can, have a look at it. It will describe in very clear detail what you're dealing with.
Yeah.
And then you're going to start to attend the SLAA rooms, Sex and Love Addiction Anonymous. You're going to hear what sex addicts, who are also called avoidance, are going to be talking about, because you as a love addict, that's the person you're going to be attracted to. So you're going to start to hear what it sounds like to be in their shoes. And then you're going to start to see, can you start to get a little bit of time, an hour at a time, a day at a time, helped by meetings, to not pick up the phone, to not reach out to that person, now called the qualifier, that you might be trying to connect to. So this is just all information of starting the beginning of the understanding around the disease. What you and I, Sarah, are going to go into are the deeper layers of how you're going to get to deeper recovery, hopefully in a much faster way, by us explaining it, really what it is and what you're going to try and do whilst being in the safe harbor of the rooms.
Completely. And there's something to add about the rooms is, from my experience as being a sober person, etc., like it's so fascinating, it's so fantastic that if there are people that have a little bit of recovery or understand recovery, that's great. And it gives you language. However, it's not a transferable skill. So if you have 10 years or 2 years in an AA recovery or an NA recovery, or what it might be, it'll give you some language around the addiction process, but doing more of that doesn't necessarily help with your SLA, with love addiction. And I think that's really important to recognize, that you can be in an understand addiction and still be in an addiction like this, which is everybody who understands love addiction would come under a process addiction, right? Because it's not a substance. So it's being able to identify, yes, keep doing the AA and the NA, that's first and foremost, absolutely keep maintaining your chemical sobriety if you're in one, and then source SLAA, or like you said, CODA, or whatever that, whatever version it might be. But for right now, it's love addiction, it's SLAA, and being able to start to really understand the language. And as well, I think it's very important as well, because I know when I, first hearing information, first hearing words, the reason that, people will probably hear you and I using the word qualifier. And the reason being, for anybody who's doing this work, is that we have to, on some level, start to slightly disengage from the person that we're withdrawing from. So if we keep using their name in all our conversations or when we're in the rooms, it keeps personalizing something. Whereas calling somebody their qualifier, it allows for a process to start where we're distancing ever so slightly, so we get to see the reality of a situation without putting the personal piece together. And that's really safe. There's something really safe about that, even though it might feel jarring. It might take a while to get used to that language, but you'll definitely hear us speaking about a qualifier. Just so people understand that it's important.
That's really good, Sarah. That's absolutely right. So the whole thing is about trying to desensitize, so anything like, because the first thing, you're so right, everything, we know that the process that's going on in our heads when we're just coming off the drug of the person that we are love addicted to, it's like everything is focused on them. So it's like taking out the photo albums, looking at the photos, carrying your cell phone into the shower in a Ziploc bag because you're afraid they might text. They're probably not going to text. You're literally, every single focus of your brain is focused on them. Where are they? What are they doing? What are they doing now? Are they in pain? Are they in as much pain as I am? What are they thinking about? Where are they? What are they doing? It's just like a repetitive, compulsive thing that's flipping over in our heads all the time. So wherever we can get a little bit of safety or solace, that's what we need to be doing in the first week, first 2 weeks, first 3 weeks of the beginning of recovery. We need to be breaking that compulsive brain loop that our brain is on, fixating on the person and trying to get to them in whatever way we can.
In whatever way we can, exactly. That just makes me think of, our people around us in those scenarios are trying maybe their best. And sometimes that looks like talking about them. Have you spoken to them? And this is really hard when if you have a group of pals, if you have a group of people, the likelihood is that thing, aka the addiction, is going to want to talk about it all the time. Going to want to name the person, use their name, talk about it, name the situations, name the scenarios, and other people in their best efforts to maybe try and support will engage that with you. And as difficult as this might be in the first few days, the first week, obviously we spoke about having 1 or 2 really solid people in your world that are your go-to, they're your safe haven to be able to say, I need to just fucking like dump about this for 5 seconds or 5 minutes. But there's like a gentle placing out there of, if at all possible, you try not to speak about the person or the situation or the thing to everybody, because the addiction is going to want to do that. It's going to want to take up your time, your energy, your every waking moment. It's going to want to take up with this. You trying to, and just on what your role is in this right now, once you find that you are a love addict or you're in withdrawal, is to attempt to find a 10-second reprieve on any given moment. 2 seconds is plenty sometimes. You'll feel it, where you just disengage, like you said. So all those wants to just talk about them, etc., it's a very real thing, and it's a very painful thing. And at the same time, if you can hold it, hold it.
Yeah. Oh, that's so true. And like I say, just to reiterate again, Sarah, what we've said, it's really, really important. We're going to the best of our ability, give you every single bit of information we've ever learned about love addiction and recovery. That's what we're planning on doing. That's what we're doing with this forum. We're trying to make sure that you get to where we got as quickly as possible, so that somehow
or
you
faster.
can faster circumvent some of the places we went down, some of the cul-de-sacs we went down. so that you can get to where you need to go as quickly as possible, which is recovery.
Mm.
And it like, just to reiterate again, it is absolutely possible to recover. And
Yeah.
it's going to take a lot of work, and it's going to take a lot of education, and it's going to take a lot of understanding about what exactly we're dealing with here.
Yeah.
And we can do it because we've done it, and we can do it together. And it is possible to get your Zing back. So
Yeah.
I just want to say that to you again.
I will agree with that. I think it's very good. And we will be here, like we've already said, having these conversations as often as possible and as we can, to keep adding to it. And ask questions. I said this the last time. Ask questions. If there's questions you want to ask. And there's going to be many versions of this that we're going to be discussing, because it's wide ranging and goes fairly deep, this addiction and recovery. But it's really good to talk about it out loud, because you don't always hear about it being spoken about out loud. So it's important, I feel.
It is.
Yeah.
And we know profoundly, if you're out there
Profoundly.
listening to this and you are a love,
Profoundly.
oh my
Yeah.
God, I hope this place that you're going to come to, RecoverZing, is going to be a place of pure crystal water of information for you around your love addiction. That's our
Yeah.
hope. Sarah and I both hope that for you, that this
Yeah.
is a place to come to hear really solid information about your recovery.
Yeah.
That's really what we want.
Exactly. Like if you're brand new to something, or you're just dipping your toe into it, that it can give you a reprieve and some information and depth to be able to keep going.
Yeah,
which is so
it.
important. So fantastic. We will be back.
We'll be back. We'll be like the Terminator. We will
we will be back. Sounds like a half threat. We'll be back to check in
be
and
back.
see
We'll
how
be
everybody
back.
is. Yes.
Back. I mean, our plan is, right, we're just getting up on our feet, but our plan
Yeah.
is, this is our plan. Our plan is to try and do one of these at least once a week. So
Yeah.
that we're dealing with, there's about, literally, if you're sitting there and you're going, what are these ones talking about? There's probably about 100, 200 core areas of information that you need to know. There's a lot to know. It's a whole field of understanding. So we're going to go through each piece as the weeks go on, so that you can build on your understanding. But there's no quick fix. There's no instant coffee version of this thing. If you're really going to get your Zing, you're really going to have to descend into it, really understand the landscape, and really start to understand what you're trying to recover from.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
no quick fix, but you can get it fully and completely.
Fully and completely. And we'll leave it at that.
Yeah, brilliant.
Amazing.
Okay.
Okay.
Thanks, Sarah.
Thank you.